Well, hey, Angel fans. Welcome to Halo Territory. I am Mike DiGiovanna, former LA Times baseball writer and host of the show. Well, as most fans know, there is a labor war looming between major league owners who want to impose a salary cap and the players' union, which is strongly opposed to a cap. And there's a good chance owners will lock out players on December 1st. Now, the sides will still have 4 months from that point to hammer out a new collective bargaining agreement. But if they don't, baseball could lose regular season games for the first time since 1995. I remember that year well because it was my first year in the Angels beat. It was also the first and no doubt last time baseball tried to field teams with replacement players, a spring training that my guest describes as a bleeping disaster. That would be former Angels general manager Bill Bavasi, who joins us to talk about that debacle. Bill, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm retired, having a good time, and it's great to see you.
Same here. So Bill was the Angels GM from 1994 to 99. He was also the Seattle Mariners GM from 2003 to 2008. And he worked a number of years at the Major League Baseball Scouting Bureau before retiring in 2020. Now, there was a 232-day work stoppage 3 decades ago that brought us this replacement player spring training. But that actually began in 1994 when players walked out on August 12th because of disputes over, shocker, a proposed salary cap and revenue sharing. That strike forced cancellation of the 1994 World Series and dragged into the winter when owners came up with a brilliant idea to field a replacement player teams in spring training. Bill, when did the Angels start assembling their replacement player team, and what was that process like?
It wasn't terribly clean. Let's put it that way. But the that process really was taken by Bob Fontaine and Ken Forsch and Jeff Parker. Um, we used that time. Marcel Latchman and I used that time to kind of get ourselves together on the major league level, kind of thinking that, hey, this is going to settle eventually, right? And we're going to have to play, so we might as well use this time to get ready. Um, so we put the time to good use that way. But um, Ken and Bob and Jeff they really just kind of put out feelers for anybody who was wanting to take a shot and play. Um, and we tried to as I recall, we tried to stay away from anybody that we thought could possibly play in the big leagues again, could or was a prospect and could get to the big leagues. And so we were pretty careful with the players in our camp. I'm not even sure if we let any of them cross over. And if we did, they were folks that we had already had come to the reality that they weren't going to get to the big leagues otherwise. So we'd give them a shot at this. But generally speaking, those were the kind of players that were in our camp. Were players that they felt they weren't going to get to the big leagues and they were going to take a shot at it.
Do you remember? I remember a tryout camp at Cal State Fullerton, and as I recall, there were almost like 1,000 players showed up. Were you at any of those? Do you recall that?
No, I was not, but I do know that Bob Fontaine kind of shepherded that. He was looking at that because he had done that so many times as a scout and a scouting director. He had done so many tryouts over his lifetime. He knew what to do, but we just had too many kids. It just there were so many young guys that showed up and older guys too. Um, it was one of those real rough camps. It was a tough thing for these kids because the first thing you do is run the 60, and if you don't run the 60 in a certain time, you leave. And so that thousand players gets knocked down to about 250 pretty quickly. And so that's real tough on those 750 who get tossed aside. That's a real tough thing. Who knows where they came from, And so those tryouts are double-edged swords. They're real nice for your community. I don't mean for the replacement player, but I mean general open tryout camps when the Dodgers and all the clubs used to hold tryouts at spring training. open tryouts. They were great for your fans, but not this one. This one was it was just different because of replacement baseball.
Yeah. Now, the Angels did eventually assemble a team, and here's what I wrote in a 2019 story looking back at that spring. This is the lead. The left-hander who works in the car detailing business zipped a fastball into the middle of the Home Depot department manager, and with that, the Angels' 1995 spring training camp was in full swing. So read the lead to my first dispatch from Arizona in my first year as Angels beat writer for the Times. The start of a wacky 6 weeks of replacement player ball that was a fantasy camp for participants, an embarrassment to coaches and executives who oversaw it, and a gold mine of material for baseball writers. Now, Bill, what stands out the most for you from that spring?
Well, what stands out the most for me in that spring was that lead. Your lead was
Well, thanks,
the first
man.
play. No, it was the first
Oh,
play of replacement baseball. And do you remember the prospect that Arizona State had? He was leading off. I think his last name is Powell. Do you remember him at
uh,
all?
there was a Chris
I'm
Powell who was your replacement center fielder. I don't
no,
remember.
no, no. I'm brain cramping, but this, gosh, I don't think it wasn't McDowell. No, it was after McDowell. It was oh my gosh. It was anyway. He was a good prospect, and he was leading off for Arizona State because in Tempe, part of our lease deal was that we had to play a charity game every spring, and so
Yep.
we played that the day before our regular spring training schedule started, and the money went to charity for that game. So. It was good. It was a night game, and because it just worked out that we were the first replacement game in
That's true.
baseball. Everybody else was playing the next day. We were playing that night, and so ESPN and every other moron who wants to cover the stuff was there. We had everybody on
Yep.
us, and
Good morning, America was there. ABC World
yep,
News Tonight and
yep,
ESPN and CNN. Yeah, it was a national story. It's like the first replacement game or replacement player
yep,
game in like 8 decades or something. I do remember that.
yeah, yeah. And Pat Murphy was managing Arizona State,
Yeah.
and Marcel Lashman was of course our manager. And the first play was a ground ball to shortstop, and he throws to first base, overthrows the first baseman. The ball bounces off those bricks behind first base. The batter runner sees the ball go by, and he rounds first to head to second, thinks better of it, comes back, and the first baseman throws the ball to the pitcher covering, and they tag the guy out. That idiotic play on everybody's part was the first replacement baseball play ever. And so I remembered that part, and then we beat the daylights out of them. I don't,
Yeah.
this was not a regular charity game to lead off spring training. You don't have Tim Salmon getting his one at bat and then coming
Yeah.
out of the lineup. You don't have a big league club that really doesn't care what they do with these college kids, right? But in this case, you had these replacement players who were being embarrassed and attacked in the press every day, and so they wanted to put it on somebody, and they did, and they absolutely beat the daylights out of these kids. And when the game was over, you and your ilk went over to the Arizona State side, and you interviewed Murphy, and he's ripping these kids, our kids. He's ripping these
Yeah.
kids and said, hey, in a few weeks' time, these guys will be back in the 7-Eleven or digging ditches or whatever. It was really disrespectful to human beings. It didn't matter if they were players, if they were replacement players or not. He was just being lousy to people, to fellow human beings. And so then you guys, of course, being what you are, you took that back to Marcel, right?
Yes.
And so you gave it to Marcel.
Just doing our jobs.
Yeah, hey, absolutely. No, I get it. And you said, hey, Marcel. So Murphy said this, right? And you gave it to him. And Marcel just kind of looked at you and said, "What? Are you kidding me? I had to turn it off in the 5th inning. I had to turn off the spigot in the 5th inning."
As I do recall, the first play in the scorebook read 6 wall 3 or 6 wall 1, I think is what you scored it. Hey, we got to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more Halo territory.
All right, we got the Warby Parkers. I got the Raiders, but one thing I upgraded to, polarized. Sorry about it.
Yeah, these are good, not only for wearing, but also out in the sun. When I become that baseball coach, I always want to be with my kids. I got the Hatchers. They're darker, a little bit wider for my face. They fit perfect. They're comfortable. It's an easy process to order these really, really cool glasses.
I am a diehard Warby Parker fan. I do have prescription glasses, and I wear Warby Parker every day for many years. I'm excited about this one. Give it a shot. Warby Parker gives you quality and better looking prescription eyewear at a fraction of the going price. Our listeners get 15% off plus free shipping when they buy 2 or more pairs of prescription glasses at warbyparker.com/foul. That's 15% off when you buy 2 pairs of glasses at warbyparker.com/foul. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them Foul Territory sent you.
Well, welcome back to Halo Territory. Our guest is Bill Bavasi, former Angels general manager. Now, in 1995, not everybody had a replacement team. In fact, the Baltimore Orioles, who were owned at the time by prominent labor lawyer Peter Angelos, refused to field a team of replacement players. Toronto GM Gord Ash refused to let his big league staff work with replacement players. Now, the Angels, under Marcel Latchman, who was in his second year managing the team at the time, seemed to take a pretty serious approach. Bill, do you sort of have any regrets about the way you guys handled the whole thing?
Yeah, I do. Not the way Marcel handled it, the way that I handled it, and the buck stops with the GM, but I think from ownership to Rich Brown to me, we should have handled it differently, or I wish I had handled it differently. Now we weren't going to take the Peter Angelos approach, because Jackie and Gene Autry were very loyal to their other owners and to the commissioner. So they were going to participate in replacement baseball, but I did respect what Peter Angelos did. But I heard after the fact, after it was all over, what I believe Gord Ash did, which was he hired the Blue Jays hired outside their staff. They hired a retired junior college, high school coaches, and basically, my understanding is they hired these guys, gave them a ballpark, gave them a bag of uniforms, a bag of equipment, said, "Hey, go get them," and that was it. He didn't let his major league staff touch the situation. And after replacement baseball, I saw what he did. I kind of hit myself on the head and said, "You got to be kidding me! I should have done that." This guy had it nailed. And by the way, Gord Ash is one of the most underrated executives I've been around. This guy's really a smart guy, and really he's glutted with common sense, and he's a good person. But that day, he got my attention. And that's what we all should have done. That's what really we all should have done. Now, Peter Angelos, God love him, that was probably the best, but we weren't going to do that. So those of us that had to participate in replacement baseball should have absolutely done what Gord did.
Now, there were some laughable moments. This is from a couple of funny quotes that came out of Replacement Players Spring. Asked to predict the winner of a replacement World Series, Pittsburgh manager Jim Leyland said, "The team that can get the most guys out of the whirlpool and onto the field." The Cleveland Indians that spring traded 5 players to the Cincinnati Reds for future considerations. Quote, Cleveland definitely got the better end of the deal, Reds manager Davey Johnson said. They didn't get anybody. I remember one game, I think we were down in old Maryville where the Brewers played. The Angels committed 4 errors, ran into 4 outs on the bases, and missed a bunch of cutoff men and a loss to the Brewers. And there were some memorable characters. That March, you guys signed a guy named Lenny Randall, who was so old he actually played for the Washington Senators in 1971. You remember him?
Oh, very well, very well.
And
That's a big personality. That kid.
yeah, he had a great. He has one of the best baseball bloopers of all time, where he lays down the bunt and just attacks the pitcher and starts one of the biggest brawls I think I've ever seen. And of course, no recounting.
He was also the one who tried to blow the ball foul territory.
That's true. That's true. Another great blooper. No recounting of replacement players spring would be complete without the tale of John Fishel, a former Cal State Fullerton star who actually played on their 1984 national championship team. And Bill, you want to sort of pick up that story?
No, no, but I will. He was a pretty good player.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he was a pretty good player with us. He was a pretty good player when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And he was really a nice guy. We had no trouble with him. He was a good guy to have around. But unfortunately, he got arrested on. I think they cuffed him in the clubhouse, or they were kind enough to wait till he got off the field. And apparently, as I recall, it was wasn't it back child support, something like that?
Yeah, it was during the national anthem. After the national anthem, I think they waited. Yeah, he owed. I think all he had to do was to not be arrested, was to not go to Phoenix. But the lure of just another paycheck playing baseball was so strong. He owed $67,000 in child support to a Phoenix area woman who claimed he had fathered a child with her, and they hauled him off to jail.
They hauled him off to jail. I picked him up. It was we didn't have our full staff there, and guys were working around the clock, and so somebody had to pick this guy up, and so all these folks were working a lot harder than I was. So I ran out there and got him, and he didn't say that he wasn't guilty. Let's put it that, but he just said, I just don't have the money. I don't have it. And I don't know how he got out of that, but we bailed him out, and then replacement baseball ended, and so I really don't know what happened with that.
Yeah, and another sign of how certain people took that spring a little too seriously. Me being a first-year writer, I actually went to the Phoenix courthouse in downtown to cover his trial, and it didn't last long.
Yeah. We did take it. We didn't. I'm not sure if taking it serious is the right way. What I recall is Marcel absolutely refusing to treat these guys like replacement players. He felt that these are. I said this before. These are our fellow human beings, no matter what you want to think of them. And we have decided to go forward with replacement baseball. And so if you've hired me as the manager, I'm going to manage these guys.
Yeah.
And if this is what you want me to do, if I'm to manage these guys, I want them treated like big leaguers. We need we need to run a big league spring training. And so we did. We didn't. They weren't protected on their meal money or anything like that, like you would be with a CBA. They didn't have that, but we did treat them pretty well. I think we treated them real well. Most clubs did the same thing as far as the money goes, but our staff coached them, and they taught them, and they tried to get them better, and they tried to get them ready, and they tried to make them better players, and I will always respect our staff for that, because they didn't want to. They knew what they were dealing with, and they knew they weren't getting big leaguers ready to play big league baseball. They were doing replacement baseball. They didn't like it. They didn't like it one bit. And that's why I go back to, we had a staff that had some pretty good big league players on it. Bobby Knopp, Rod Carew. We had good former players, and they were supportive of the Players Association. So we just put all these people in just such an awful position that I'm beating a dead horse, but Gord had the right answer.
I give you a perfect example of how serious your staff took it. I remember that spring being in the clubhouse and sitting in a chair next to one of the replacement players who I was interviewing. And Rod Carew walks by and he goes, "Get out of that chair. That's a big leaguer's chair." And I didn't think he was serious at first. I kind of laughed, that kind of weird laugh. Okay. And he looks at me with those Rod Carew eyes. "That's a big leaguer's chair." And he meant it. And, it was my first year in the beat. Maybe Rod was trying to intimidate me a little bit for future considerations. But yeah, those guys did take it serious. So I will give them credit. That replacement player team did make it through 6 weeks of spring training. Most of the players, as I recall, pocketed their meal money and ate at McDonald's all spring. But they did make it to Southern California. But by then, the strike had finally been settled. But the replacements did agree to play the Freeway Series, one game in Dodger Stadium, one game in Angel Stadium. And I recall them putting on a good show.
It was the regular Freeway Series. There was a third game, but it got canceled.
Oh, okay.
It got canceled. So we were supposed to go back up to LA for Sunday's game. We played Friday at our place and Saturday at their place and Sunday at their place. But Sunday morning is when everything got settled.
Yeah, I do remember Chris Powell, your center fielder and a former slow pitch softball teammate of mine a few years before 1995, making a spectacular catch. He was. We had a good team. He made a spectacular diving catch in the outfield. And at the end of that game, your Angels replacement team got a standing ovation, a pretty good standing ovation from the home crowd. Could you sort of see at the time how, with so much resentment and bitterness toward the striking players, how they sort of came to appreciate the efforts of these guys?
Yes, I do. I can see that. And that is, you got that right. That is what happened. And, the Anaheim fan is an interesting fan. They're not, they know the game. They really do know the game. I think for the rest of the nation, they don't believe that. They don't believe that anybody outside New York or Boston or Chicago knows anything about anything. But the Anaheim Angel fan, they know what they're doing. But they've also got heart. They've also got some heart. And I think I don't think they appreciated replacement baseball any more than you and I did. They weren't thrilled about replacement baseball, but the fans who came out to the ballpark that night, and it wasn't a tiny crowd, they came out and they appreciated the effort. I think they were surprised. And by the way, those two games were pretty clean. You mentioned the game in Marysville; those were filthy games. These two games were pretty clean games, and they kind of looked like. They weren't big league games, but you're watching these players and they actually played the game correctly. They did everything right. It's just that, the ball moves slower, the holes are bigger, everything's not big league baseball. But they put that effort out and the Anaheim fan appreciates that. Yeah. And I saw that again later on, a few years later when we traded for Tony Phillips the second time. He got in some legal hassles, missed a couple of months, came back, and when he came back and he went to the plate, he didn't get a standing ovation or anything like that. But his first at bat, he doubled, and they came to life. And so, they'll support effort, And so
Yeah.
that's what I think they saw. They didn't see great baseball, but they saw great effort. And I do recall Powell's catch vividly.
It was a great catch. So the big leaguers did return that spring. They somehow jammed a 6-week spring training into 3 weeks, and the 1995 season started a little late, late April. And what a season that was. The Angels built an 11-game lead in early to mid-August and had a pair of 9-game losing streaks. Blew that lead, lost to Seattle in a 1-game playoff. How tough was that to endure after everything that happened and that lead that you guys had built up?
Well, it was real tough, obviously, but there's there's no getting around that. It was. I think you had actually asked me, hey, where do you think you're going to be at the end of this season? What do you think this is? What do you think is going to happen? I said, and I said, you and I think we were just BSing. We were just talking. I said, we're either going to finish this thing the way we should, or I will have hopefully survived a botched suicide attempt. Because it was so emotional. It was so up and down. It was, you had these 8-game, you had these long losing streaks, long winning streaks, and then you get to where you're really starting to fold. And it's hard to stop. It's hard to put the brakes on that at times. And I know, interestingly enough, we had 2 8-game losing streaks, I think, in that loss period. And I think they were both broken by Abbott. I think Abbott broke both the 8-game losing streaks. But we had a pretty good club, Mike. But we were way ahead of schedule. We were. I'm not sure I was even ready for it. I really, I wasn't, because in 94, you kind of glossed over the 94 season. That was a mess too. And because if you look at the standings for 1994 in the American League West,
Everybody were about a losing record, right?
We were like a billion games below 500 and still in it. I'm looking at our club. We're just awful, and we had signed Bo Jackson as a kind of a circus act, and he was fantastic. He actually did a great job for us. But we were. I remember trying to trade for Rick Aguilera.
Oh, wow.
And this, I'm offering prospects. Andy McPhail he's just dragging me through a tin horn. He's just killing me, and I'm giving up more and more. And finally, we don't do the deal. But the whole time I was talking to him, I just couldn't believe. I thought, I can't believe I'm trying to get a player at the trade deadline, and we're in the worst division I've ever seen. But we're still in it. We still have a chance to win, but we're like 15 games below 500. It's just disgusting. So now, during that replacement baseball, building the roster, Marcel and I were focused on the big league club, and so we were trying to figure out everything we could make better. And we actually put together a business plan and followed it. And we really felt we were going to grow the ball club. We were just going to keep growing this young club that Buck Rogers, he courageously went with young kids. Buck did a great job bringing Jim Edmonds along for an example. And so we thought we're just going to get better, just keep getting better. And then in spring training, Joe Klein, who was the general manager of the Detroit Tigers, called me and proposed trading Tony Phillips for Chad Curtis.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't do that. We have Chad on a good contract, and he was paying Tony 4.5. I was paying Chad 2. He said, Tony's on one more year. I'll pay his salary. I'll pay the difference. So you'll still have your Chad Curtis salary, but I'll have Chad. You take Tony. And so, we're hemming and hawing over that. And I remember a lot about this trade. And 2 things. One, Matt Keogh, may he rest in peace, was just one of the hardest working scouts I've ever been around in my life. And had just got great information, and he had played with Tony, and he said, Bill, look, I wouldn't wait to make this trade. He said, we all knew Chad was not well liked in the clubhouse, And I also felt he had quite a bit of false hustle to him. I just didn't take to the guy as much as I thought I should have. He was tough to be around. Anyway, so he said, look, Tony is that rare guy who will make other players better. He will make Edmonds better. He will make Snow better. He will make Salmon better. It just went down the list. He said he'll make every one of these guys better, and that sold me on it. And I don't know if you probably recall this, but at that time, it looked like the club was going to Peter Uberoth.
Oh yeah,
and,
that's right.
And I was dealing with Peter Uberoth. Jackie and Gene Autry told me, hey, when Peter calls, treat him like an owner. Give him information, give him what he needs to know. I said, okay, great. And so I did. And those were some of the most fun months of my career. I loved dealing with Peter Uberoth. Now, I loved dealing with Jackie and Gene Autry too. But Peter Uberoth was bringing a different dynamic. And I felt I was going to learn a lot with this guy, and I really enjoyed myself. But he came in town. He came into Arizona because he also owned the DoubleTree Corporation, and they were headquartered in Arizona. So he flew in there to do some business. Then he stopped by the ballpark. He says, "Hey, so what's up?" And so I told him about the Tony Phillips trade, and he looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me?" Because the reputation Chad in the public was way different than Chad in the clubhouse, right?
Yep.
In the public, here's this. We're in Orange County. And here's this white guy with a crew cut and always jumping on the wall, trying to catch that ball that's up in the upper deck. He's not going to ever get near. And so fans kind of think this guy's all that. He's just a good team player, and he's a hustler. And so I told Peter, I said, Peter, he's not the guy you think he is. He's not. He's a selfish guy, and he really is not the good team player you think he is. And so as we talked about it a little bit, he said, hey, go, you should make that deal. You should make that deal. I said, I know why I should make that deal, but why are you thinking I should make that deal right now? And he said, Bill, look, as you're going through life and business, he said, if you have somebody working for you and you just don't like them, when you go get your coffee in the morning, you look at him and think, wow, I'm not sure I'm not on that guy. If you have that dynamic in your company, you're going to fail. He said, you've got to get rid of that person, because eventually you're going to shaft him or he's going to shaft you. So make the move, make your best move. And I kind of lived by that ever since that. I've kept that in mind a long time. And so we made that deal, and Tony made that club what you saw. He really did. I think he was a big part of that thing, and I think we were still relying on so many kids that it just got too much for him. Yeah. I also regret, very painfully, that when we started the year, like I told you, we were just trying to grow this club, right? And we felt that Damian Easley should be left at second base. And I said that at the start of the season. I said, hey, no matter what we do, as the year goes on, leave Damian at second base. But there's always this temptation to put him at shortstop tonight, third base tomorrow, second to the next day, because he can do everything. He could do everything. But we felt the consensus was he's not going to settle in offensively until we find him a position where he can be his own. So we put him at second base, and we pledged that, hey, we're not going to move him off second base for any reason. Now we trade for Tony, and the first thing I ask him is, hey, do you mind playing third base? And his eyes kind of got big, and he said, yeah, I can play third base. Yeah, sure. Okay. And so he didn't tell me this until years later. He said, nothing scared me more than playing third base. He said, I'm scared to death every day. And Garrett Anderson and I were talking about it. He was, because we moved him to third so that we could bring him up and put him in left field. And Garrett said, he said, every time I'd see Tony have trouble at third base. I thought, oh God, I'm going down to AAA. And I told him, I said, no, we were committed to that too. Once we brought him up, we felt we're not going to send him down. He's gonna, even if he struggles, he's gonna suffer. Because this year we're supposed to grow. We're supposed to get better.
Yeah.
Well, they ended up. There was a time in like July where we had a better pace than the 27 Yankees or something.
Oh, yeah.
We had
100 wins,
fire,
maybe.
killing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, superstition being what it is. I got a letter in August from Charlie Blaney, the farm director for the Dodgers, and I had known him for a long time. He sent me a note saying, "Dear Bill, congratulations on winning the American League West."
Oh, wow.
No lie.
Yeah.
Sincerely, Charlie Blaney. And if we didn't have a home game that night, I would have driven up to Dodger Stadium and killed him. Because and I'm not a superstitious guy. I try not to be, but that was over the top.
Well, let's fast forward 4 years to 1999, which, as Angel fans of a certain age will remember, was a bit of a disaster. A team many picked to win the division went 70-92. Finished last place, season full of turmoil. Terry Collins, the manager, quit in early August. Bill Bavasi stepped down in late September. Tony Tavares, the team president at that time, gave new general manager Bill Stoneman a mandate to blow that team up, and he didn't. 3 years later, a team that you and Bob Fontaine, the scouting director who you've referenced in the show, basically put together, the nucleus of that team wins the World Series. What was that whole experience like for you? Was it validation? Was it regret? What do you think?
It was probably a little bit of both, a little bit of everything. Everything goes through your mind, things like that. But I want to tell you that team that won was Bill Stoneman's team. He made a couple of deals that were so impactful, and they were deals I could have made. But I didn't. And the deal for the second baseman Kennedy was a big one. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And who was the big right-hand pitcher he got?
Kent Bottenfield.
Bottenfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he got guys that actually did things for him, and that club grew and got better. So I think that the nucleus was. A lot of the nucleus on the position player side was ours, but Bill did some great things. Bill did some fabulous things, and that was clearly his team. And so that's why when I appreciate the credit that we get. I do appreciate it. I believe most of that we got, or not. I don't believe it's most of it. But I believe we got some credit because I think I was nice to you guys. I think we all got along, right? I mean, I really did.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, relatively for sure.
We got along pretty well, and I think I was always nice. And so I do think when you're nice, people give you a break. I think that was the media giving us a break and giving us some kudos that whether we deserved them or not, it was they were being real nice. I will say one of the crazy things that happened was when the Angels won and Michael Eisner was giving the speech on the field. I don't know if you remember this. He mentioned my name.
Oh, I do not remember. Wow.
He did. He said, Logan, how can you lose when you have people like Stoneman and Bavasi putting this thing together? And I thought, I'm not sure he knows I'm off the payroll. Maybe he thinks I still work there.
He had a lot of characters on the payroll, remember?
Yes. Bill invited Bobby and I to the first game at Anaheim Stadium. I'm not even sure. Was that game one of the series or the first?
Yes,
did it start
the Angels had home field. Yeah, they started in Anaheim.
He invited us to the first game, which was super nice thing for him to do. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that done. That's probably doesn't happen very, very often, if ever. But as I recall, what I had heard is that the idea was put to him by Kevin Ulick and Tim Mead, and his response was, can I do that? I haven't even thought of that. I'd love to do that. Yeah. So Bobby and I are indebted to Bill
Nice.
for doing that. And I'm old enough to remember Bill Stoneman as a pitcher, and I always admired this guy. This guy's pitching career is really, really impressive. This
Two
isn't just a
no-hitters.
GM.
Two
This is a
no-hitters.
super big league pitcher. So I just, and I always, no matter what position, whether I was on the grounds crew or a general manager or anything in between, I always appreciated big league players. I don't care if they were stars. If you put on a big league uniform, you're somebody in my eyes. So anyway, he did a real nice thing that he certainly did not have to do, and at a time in his life where he's got other stuff to think about.
Yeah. Well, as much as I've enjoyed this trip in the Wayback Machine, I do want to bring my last question up to present day. As you know, Bill, an Orange County resident, the Angels are in an 11-year playoff drought with 10 straight losing seasons. You're a former GM, baseball lifer. If looking at this franchise right now from the outside, is there a blueprint that you would suggest for them to turn this thing around and return to playoff contention?
Nothing you haven't thought of. It all starts with the base. First of all, I want to say I'm still a fan of the Angels. It's still my team. And I mean, and I think all of us that grew up with the Angels, I was there for 20 years, and the only jobs I had in baseball before that, I was on a grounds crew in San Diego. And so for 20 years, that's the only organization I knew. So I still love the organization. And I had a great chance to meet Artie Moreno early in his tenure there, and what a nice guy. I'm a fan of his, and I'm rooting for him, and I'd love to see him get a little bit of luck. Every owner who wins, they've got luck on their side every once in a while. You gotta don't discount that. I'd love to see this guy get some luck, have some luck, but beyond luck, I'd probably be making sure I invest more and more and more consistently in scouting and player development and analytics. I mean, I know you probably don't think I'm an analytics guy, and I'm not, but I do see the need and the value, and that if you're my competitor and you have analytics, well, I want to have better analytics. And so you're going to have to invest in those things, and maybe back off for a while, the big name free agent, until you think you're ready for that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we can all make mistakes and think we're ready, but we're not. That happened to me in Seattle. We had an edict when I first got there. You're not gonna be able to go through a 5-year building plan. And if you look at the club I inherited, it was very old, and I had to turn it over. And this was a very popular ball club up there, so I was definitely the devil himself, coming in there and turning these guys over. But we did get better, and that was our edict, was almost to get better every month. Almost, they were pretty unreasonable. I got some great stories from up there, but we did get better until 2007. And we won 88 games in a year where my manager bailed halfway through the year, but we still won 88 games. So we were getting better, but we lost some RBIs and Jose Guillen. And so we had to take some chances, and we took the chances, and they didn't work out. We were awful, and I got fired. I should have got fired, because you got to take chances, and the buck stops with you as the GM. It stops with you. If you don't win, you die. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
But so I look at this, and I think, that they're going to have to get back to the basics, and then just hold your powder, keep your powder dry until you're good enough to go out and get that big free agent to put you over the top. I think it's bad luck and a shame. It's one of the most crying shames I've seen in baseball, is to see a ball club that has Mike Trout and Ohtani. When you have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, and you're not in the postseason, that's just a bummer for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming anybody. It's just a bummer. It's a sad thing. I wish they had a little bit more luck in those years. And I thought it was coming when Joe got there, when Joe Madden got there, but I guess things had changed enough where it just wasn't going to happen. But I do wish them this. When somebody tells you, "Hey, I wish you luck," I really wish these guys luck. I'd like to see them get a little bit of luck just once in a while.
Yeah.
And so that's my blueprint is it's not a real good one. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's nothing earth shattering that you haven't thought about and all your fans haven't thought about. Just get back, build the base, and work from there.
All right. That's going to do it for us on Halo Territory today. Thanks for joining us. Bill Bavasi, great to catch up with you. Always
That was fun.
talking about the old days. And please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Halo Territory.